Hi, Ben and Mary here to talk about writing maintainable OptoScript code for your pack control strategy.
To build solid, bug-free, easy-to-maintain OptoScript blocks, you'll need to use a few basic software development concepts.
In this slideshow, we'll take a look at a piece of working OptoScript and a few ways that it can be improved for better maintainability.
Specifically, we'll take a look at the importance of comments, good variable names, and avoiding the temptation to copy and paste.
Let's get started, Mary. Check out this chunk of OptoScript code here that I've written. It's pretty typical of how I would write code, but in my defense, it actually compiles and runs with no errors.
That's good, but let's take a closer look and see how we can fix it to be more maintainable for future expansion or improvement. First of all, I'm seeing no comments at all. I'm going to have to stare at this code for a few minutes to try to figure out what it does and how it does it.
Yeah, I have to admit, Mary, I kind of forget how it works myself.
A short note about what the code does and how it does it is helpful, even if we're looking at our own code. This makes it easier next time this block is opened, whether it's in a few days or in a few years. There is such thing as too many comments. Remember that these have to be maintained too.
That's a good point. Let's have a look at this code, Mary. What's it doing? It appears to be building a password string based on the day of the month. Then, once that password's been created, that string is then written to the IO unit's FTP memmap location.
There you go. That's all you need. So let's add a comment to that effect at the top of this block right now while we're thinking about it before the phone rings or we forget.
All right, there we go. A couple of lines of comment. You happy now, Mary?
I am happy. What's next?
Well, while I was going through the code trying to figure out what it was doing, I noticed that a couple of the variable names were pretty confusing. Temp this, temp that. It was pretty hard to keep track of what all those temps were doing.
Especially in OptoScript, where your variable names cannot be created on the fly, it's tempting to use temp variables. By renaming these temp variables with more meaningful names instead, it's a lot easier to understand what's happening here. You're also less likely to use these variables elsewhere, possibly in another chart that could be running at the same time.
Two charts using the same variable. That could be interesting.
So we'll change the names, add a couple of comments, and a little white space.
Mary, one thing I noticed after your edit is that the original code was 4 pretty confusing lines. But after your edit, it's still only 4 lines, but even now I can follow them. That's pretty cool.
Excellent. Now just remember, we need to use caution when modifying existing code, since variables could be used elsewhere.
Okay, third and final step. You've probably noticed one of my lazy coding techniques by now. That is, once I get a piece of code that works, I just cut and paste it every time I need it. See, here, only the IO unit varies. The rest of the code is the same. So how easy is that?
Yes, but while the temptation to copy an apparently working chunk of code can be very strong, resist that urge.
Oh, but why?
3 reasons. First of all, you could make a mistake in your copy-paste and forget to change, for example, a Unit 1 to a Unit 2. You've just created a hard-to-find bug. Second, if you later find a bug or room for improvement, you'll have to fix it 4 times and it's easy to miss one. Third, maybe today you want support for 4 units, but tomorrow you need 12. Think about expandability.
All right, you've got me on that one. So what's the best way then to avoid the dreaded copy and paste, Mary? Do I use a subroutine, a table, pointers, something else? What do you got in mind?
That depends. Often when you find yourself copying and pasting code, that could be a good place for a subroutine, especially with code you think might be used in another chart or even another strategy. Here we're only talking about a few lines of repeated code, and we can use a table rather than individual variables.
Okay, good point, Mary. I can see me doing that if the part that changes were a string or an integer, but there's no such thing as a table of IO units.
That's where we get a little bit fancy with a pointer table. The ability to loop through the set of similar variables is well worth a few lines of setup code. See, this isn't so bad. The pointer table points to the existing IO units.
And now I can use a loop. I like loops. Hey Mary, does this one need a delay?
Maybe so. Perhaps some error checking too, but we'll cover those concepts another day. Check out the before and after. Before, we had many lines of uncommented, hard-to-maintain code.
Now, we have comments and a simple-to-maintain loop in just a few lines with helpful variable names and one little pointer table. Even I can follow that now, Mary. Thanks a heap. That's much better.
Join us on the Opto forums for more code tips and discussions.
Thanks for watching.